Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Let me get these in the right order here. Call to order this regular meeting of the Miami Special Utility Authority for Tuesday, January 20th, 2015. We have the invocation by the pastor of First Christian Church, Brian Brubaker. Brian, thank you for being here.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just ask for your wisdom. We ask for your insight. Father, we thank you that you have blessed us so richly in so many different ways. And Father, forgive us when we fail to acknowledge that, recognize all of the blessings that we so richly enjoy. Father, I do ask for a blessing upon this meeting. Father, I thank you for these men and women who have taken their time to serve in this capacity. Father, I pray that you would just guide them, lead them. Father, I pray for this community. Father, I pray that Miami can experience your blessings and continue to do such. And Father, we give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. Father, again, we just offer you our love and our praise. It's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is public input and unscheduled personal appearances. Anyone in the audience that wishes to address the authority on any of the posted agenda items? There being no one, we'll move to item 5, which is consent agenda. Staff is recommending items 6 through 14 for the consent agenda. If there are no questions on any of those items, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve items 6 through 14 in the consent agenda.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Johnson?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Forrester?
Aye.
And Schultz?
Aye. Item number 15, new business. Any new business? Anyone? There being none, item 16, staff reports are written. Reports are included in your packet if available, and staff is present for questions. If there are any questions on any of the items in the packet.
Have none, Mayor.
Nothing, Mayor.
Item 17, trustee and community announcements. Deal, did you have something you wanted to?
Yes, sir. I'd just like to give an update on the sanitation pickup. It's a little bit different from last year. If the holiday falls on Monday, your pickup will be Tuesday, and your normal Tuesday collection will be Wednesday, and your normal Wednesday collection will be Thursday, and your normal Thursday collection will be Friday. So it's always going to be a day later when the holiday falls on a Monday. That's all I have.
Okay, so if the holiday's on a Monday, your collection will be one day later. Thank you, Neil. Item 18, future agenda planning. Dean, do you have anything under that item?
No, Your Honor.
Then I will ask for a motion to adjourn under item 19.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Forrester?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We're going to move right into the regular city council meeting for Tuesday, January 20th. Item number 2, after calling to order, is public input and unscheduled personal appearances. Anyone in the audience that wants to address the council on any of the agenda items? There being none, we will move to the consent agenda. Staff is recommending items 4 through 11 for the consent agenda in the council meeting. If there are no questions on any of those items, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion, Your Honor.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Forrester?
Aye.
Sharbit?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye. Okay, now we have some real meat to the agenda. Item 11, well, let me see, make sure I don't go too far. Up, we did 11. Item 12, Will Rogers Middle School students' future city presentation. Chuck And it says students. I see one out there, but I'm not sure she's.
Well,
with that.
actually, the students are getting ready for their competition on Saturday. They're
Okay.
still doing some finals, so they're going to ask to come back after their presentation this Saturday. So there'll be no
Okay.
presentation tonight.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Then, nothing on that item?
Nothing on
Okay, you're up again for item 13, ordinance and public hearing therefore on a recommendation by the Planning Commission to rezone the property at 20D Southeast from M2 to C2 for Tree of Life Church Ministries. Chuck, that's got your name on it, and would you start by explaining what M2 and C2 designations are, please?
M2 is an industrial zoning, one of the classifications in our industrial zoning, and a church facility is not, cannot meet the zoning requirements for that. It can't go in that zoning requirement. So on January 8th, the Planning Commission met to rezone the property to a C2, which is a commercial zoning, which matches the adjacent zoning in that area, which does allow for a church to go into that area. The proposed plan is to renovate an existing building and demo that building for their church facility, the Life Church, Tree of Life Church Ministries.
So 20D Southeast, orient me kind of where that
it's
is.
kinda-
But we're on south of Central, west of the truck route, that facility in there, and does that
I
help?
got Benny's in my mind. That's not it?
What is it close to?
Farther south, it's the big old, it's the
Oh,
old
one
MR
south.
building,
Okay,
MR
okay.
building, the great big
Okay.
warehouse
Okay.
building.
All right,
Used to be the Red Pritchard building.
okay. So it's the big block, white block building on the truck route, is that?
Yes.
Okay, I know where we are. And were there any comments received at the?
There was no
public-
comments
zoning
at the planning commission meeting, at the public hearing. No one made comments or submitted comments, and it was voted, recommendation from the planning commission 5-0 to recommend to the city council that it be rezoned.
And we're just rezoning just that property, nothing to do with the block area or anything else, but just that very specific property, is that correct?
Correct.
Any other questions for Chuck?
No, I
I
don't know.
have one, forgive me for not knowing, but is Tree of Life Church Ministries, is it currently at another location now?
I'm going to let them answer that.
I'm Jim
So-
Land. We were meeting in the VFW hall.
Oh.
We had leased it from the city.
Okay.
We just turned that back over to the city last Thursday.
Okay.
And left it in good shape, too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Mayor, as a
Yes,
formality,
David.
because of, thank you, because of the legal issue, it's required that we open for public hearing.
Okay.
And see if anybody from the community has a comment or not.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Do we have, Jack, did you want to say anything?
No, sir, I'm fine.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
And a second?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
Sharbit,
Aye.
Forrester,
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye. Okay, item 14 is an emergency clause. And is there a reason for that, for an emergency clause on that particular item?
Not really. No, it's just on my ordinance.
Okay. I mean, is there work going to commence immediately there?
Otherwise, it goes into effect 30 days from today's date and publication unless you prescribe a different date.
Mr. Land, does that create any sort of hardship for you guys if the zoning change is not effective immediately?
No, sir.
So in that case, is there anyone want to give consideration to that? Then we'll just move on then to item, there'll be no action on item 14. Move on to item 15. Amend Miami City Code, Section 2463, Industrial Service and Subsidiary Rate, Schedule IS 1001 and Section 2464, Billing Tables and also making the amendment retroactive to October 2014. David, that's got your name by it?
Mayor, I might defer on some of this to Mr. David Roundtree. Essentially, the ordinance, from my perspective, was designed to clarify an existing practice from a management perspective, but I understood that the utility billing department really needed more clarity in the application of the ordinance. And so David and I met. He proposed some amendments to the ordinance to make it consistent with the management practice. It would apply to any qualifying industrial customer. Hopefully you received it in advance of the last meeting. The proposed ordinance has a number of recitals or whereas clauses to help explain the intent. I'm certainly, I should also point out, the agenda says make it retroactive to October 2014. The actual ordinance simply grants the city manager the authority to resolve any inconsistencies with our qualified industrial customers back to October 2014.
And so this is just an attempt to bring clarity to the ordinance as it exists today.
That's my intent, yes, sir.
Okay. David, do you have anything you want to add?
David's pretty well said it. It's the issue is it puts the rates for the subsidiaries in our rate schedule. They weren't in our rate schedule, and although they were included within the industrial rates when we did a rate study, they're not part of the schedule per se to look at it. So that's also one of the main things that it does.
Okay. Do we have any questions?
No, sir.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
And do we have a second? I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Abstain.
Forrester,
Abstain.
Weston.
Aye.
That has carried. Item number 16 is emergency clause related to the same city codes. Do we have a motion to approve the emergency clause?
Is there a need for that, David?
I would encourage you to consider one, Councilman, because it will help with the billing cycles going into the next set of bills. And that will save the city and the customers money and frustration.
Okay, motion to approve, Mayor.
And I'll second that also. Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Sharbit,
Abstain.
Forrester,
Abstain.
On that basis, and I perhaps should have thought of this more in advance, but on that basis, as a matter of law, the emergency clause cannot pass.
Because it requires 4 or 5, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But I do understand possible reasons for abstention by the two council people. I believe they may be employees of affected industries and don't want to give the appearance of any impropriety.
All right. I don't think there's any conflict of interest, but they're just being careful that there's not even the appearance that there would be a conflict, and I respect that and appreciate it. So the emergency clause is not passed. Item number 16, Civic Center rehab / relocation. Chuck, you're busy tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we want to give you an update and looking for direction on the Civic Center building project. Sometime back, we started looking at the City Hall, and the first step we did is what kind of space needs do we need to have. We came up with a space study, detailed space study, which GH2 Architects helped us come up with, and approximately 25,000 square feet is the office space we're looking at. Options, of course, is build a new building, rehabilitate the existing building, or find another building to purchase or renovate. And renovating this building, the last presentation we had before the City Council was that based on conversations we've had with a local contractor, that looked like a great option to pursue, a cost-effective option that we had, with the idea that the structure's solid. If, based on their observations, that if the structure was solid, that would be a cost-effective way to rehab this building. Rehab or restore, we're talking about a new roof, new electrical, basically everything inside, new plumbing, new HVAC would be redone, again, with the cost saving, assuming a solid structure. some general numbers of what kind of spacing we have right now laid out there. Some pictures of the existing structure. Kind of quickly goes through these. That it was part of the assessment from the structural company that was done on this. We had an independent firm come in and look at the structure, and these are just part of their pictures during that process. They looked at the gym, looked
So Chuck, let me just ask you there, because when we first started re-looking at the possibility of demolishing down to the bare walls, basically, we talked about hiring a firm, third-party firm, to come in and do a structural assessment. Are you saying that that has been done?
Yes, that has
Okay.
been done, yes.
All right.
And these are part of the pictures from that assessment that was done. And there's some light rust. Nothing that they found during the process was immediate or something that couldn't wait till we remodel. Some, I want to say, very minor issues, some surface rust at certain locations of the building, but nothing major that was found in the structure. Some things that could be addressed, that need to be addressed, but aren't of anything major significance at this point in time. Some exposed steel and on the railing there. Some, again, surface rust on some of the beams and the gym. There's some issues there. Again, minor issues that would need to be addressed. Some stresses and fractures that would need to be addressed. But as part of any renovations, those would be in consideration and taken care of. But again, nothing major. So, the analysis, an independent structural analysis with GH2 Architects and Wallace Engineering. Again, their report comes back that it appears to be in good condition, and that the deficiencies that were presented are not considered serious structural problems at this time. This is just structurally of the structural components. This gives us an idea of what beams we can open up. Like this beam here is represented on there. There's a lot of spaces that we can open up, and that was part of the design in looking at the building, that we can open it up more. And this just gives us an idea of some of those beams that would need to stay in place.
So the orange ones need to stay in place?
Yes, and again, this is one here. There's one on the other side of that wall. We see these variety, but the spacing allows us some options, I guess, of opening up some walls that we have here. So quickly, we were looking at, I don't want to say quickly, but the last comparisons, we're looking at renovating a city hall versus some buildings downtown. And if you look at cost factors, economic development, nostalgic, and future expansion, we kind of weighed those two options. Again, the buildings here in downtown are relatively the same. The buildings we looked at were also buildings of good structure. We're talking about completely remodeling this building just as buildings downtown, a variety of buildings we looked at. So we're saying, you know, a similar cost to renovate in the ballpark. The cost to renovate this one versus a building downtown would relatively be, that renovation cost with solid structure would be relatively the same. The downtown building, of course, we'd have to purchase that, and if we move downtown, the city hall being vacant, you know, there would be a demolition cost also associated with that if there was a move downtown. So the city hall would not have those costs of purchasing. This has already been purchased, and we would have to demo, which saving some costs there. Economic development, you know, of course, having city offices and more people downtown there from the city, if somebody else didn't take that site, would be an economic boost to the downtown area. I'm calling it nostalgic. There's a lot of people that have a lot of history here, a lot of culture here, a lot of things that have grown up here. Again, renovating this building, extending the life of this building. We're coming up on its 60th anniversary of this building. renovating it. You know, there's no reason it can't last, you know, past the century mark. Future expansion, this building also allows, and the renovations we're talking about could be built out to up to 30,000 square feet of office space. Right now, we're looking at 25,000. So in the future, if other departments consolidate or if we grow, it gives us some other options with that. We're also talking about a potential option is to move the banquet room functions into the gym, incorporate that into more of a gym community center, that some of those functions that are happening in the banquet room could be moved to there. That would allow office space in what we refer to as our banquet room at this time. The site also, this existing site we're on, it's a rather large site. There's future potential for additional buildings in the future, again, if the city decides to consolidate some of their services here at this location. So just roughly looking at those factors, you can see that rehabbing the existing city building has many more pluses than a town building. Again, that's based on the knowledge we have at this point in time, and these factors and the knowledge that we have. It appears that our best bet to move forward would be to rehabilitate the existing civic center. So it's our recommendation staff's recommendation to go out for a proposal for construction manager at risk. We would have an RFP out there, get interested companies to give us a proposal. Once we get that information, we would come back to the city council on recommendations, who to hire, what firm to hire, along with project budget, scheduling, funding options to move forward with the renovation of this building.
Chuck, how do you get an apples-to-apples comparison with the CMARs without some sort of design?
I'm gonna Steve Jaggers from GH2, and he's the architect who's been helping us through this process, and Steve has worked in the CMAR process, and I'm gonna let him help answer that question.
Hello. The CMAR process, we would probably take a look at the initial layouts immediately, get some sort of a scope, but then the benefit of the CMAR at risk is they're going to be able to come in and help us with the phasing, tell us some of the things, construction elements, construction techniques that can be cost savings through the design process. One thing that we really think that is going to happen is it's going to have to be multi-phased. We're not going to be able to come in and renovate the entire city hall at once because we have to keep it functioning. Moving into and renovating maybe the banquet room as it is now into office space, then kind of vacating this side of the building, completely renovating it is really the best solution. And with all of the risks and factors that come into opening up a building of this nature, having a CM on board through the design process, through the time that we're looking further. We've done structural analysis, HVAC analysis, but we really need to start pulling down ceilings and looking to see what we've got. So having them on board beside us through the design process really helps, and it really helps the bid packages get finalized to a point where they're as familiar with the building as we are through the whole process. So we could step back, and this isn't something that Chuck and I really talked about. We could step back a little bit and get into an initial design phase, get through a schematic level. We would give our best estimate with our cost estimator, and then we would go out for a CM at risk. One thing that we have talked about is we need to have budgets established. Certain construction managers are going to be better suited for certain size of projects. If it's a $10 million project, which it's not, that's going to run off some smaller guys. If it's a $2 million project, it's not well suited for some of the bigger construction managers at risk in the area that would bid it. So that factor, as well as the scheduling. I don't know if I answered your question or if I just rambled for 5 or 10 minutes.
I'm not sure either. I think when you talked about taking a step back and coming up with a preliminary design that you might then use your estimator to get a quote from, and then maybe use that to help evaluate various CMAR candidates would probably be a workable approach. You know, we've used the CMAR process on the stadium project, and Neil and I serve on that committee, and we think it worked very well. Of course, it was a larger project than this. We think this is going to be. We just need to make sure we're able to get an apples-to-apples comparison, however that happens.
And I think, if I can elaborate a little more, that the difference between the CM at risk and bidding it out turnkey to a general contractor in this scenario, there's just so many moving pieces with the phasing of it. The time frame, the reality is there's going to be a construction manager on site for probably a year and a half. You want to select that person. You don't just want the low bidder necessarily. You know, there are certainly projects that are well suited for a general contractor hard bid. I think if we were going to take and go build a pre-engineered metal building structure, build a new city hall on an undeveloped land, that's the perfect scenario. With so many things happening around here, you want somebody that you can trust that's a second set of eyes for the city. So that's our personal opinion. We use it 50-50, but on large projects that have a lot of moving pieces and phasing of such, it's what our recommendation is.
Chuck, let me back up a minute and ask you about the gym. You know, in these conversations, it's, do we keep the gym? Do we not keep the gym? And in this proposal, clearly you're proposing that we keep the gym and modify it to be, also serve as the banquet room. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you talked about there, you and your staff?
Yes. As far as the gym facility, as I mentioned, one option is to the south end of that building, taking out some locker rooms, the stage, and those kind of things. The functions that are in the banquet room may not having a full-blown kitchen, but having a meeting place where people can come in, put some hot plates and those kind of things, and then having the gym be a meeting place that people can utilize, much like they use the banquet room now. There may be mats or pads down to protect the flooring out there, but to use that space as more of a community center. It was just one thought that would open up the banquet room for office spacing, and yet keep some of the functions that are going on here now to continue on.
And of course, it would still be used as a gym too.
And a gym too, yes.
Much more multi-purpose.
Yes.
So now we need to talk about the cost of the HVAC and everything for the gym, because in some of our early numbers, we weren't really considering that. I mean, we knew there was a number there, but we weren't comparing that. So in comparing to the downtown option, we have the cost of remodeling the gym also, correct?
Yes, yes. Yes. We would, and those numbers we would come back with, more detailed numbers exactly, after we get the CMIR, the RFPs, and working with the architects and working with the CMIR contractor to come back with some hard cost, some better numbers, I guess.
Chuck, ultimately, and I think he touched on it, is that my biggest thing is the fear of the unknown, and I'm going to assume that's what they're going to come in and do, and I noticed in some of the lettering is that there was some stuff that was not removed, and stuff that wasn't exposed. That would probably be a good first step. I'm going to just assume that that's what we would want to do, is to actually look at what could be the unknown before, so we can have those numbers, what we ultimately could run into.
Yes, there. As we get along further in the design process and get hard numbers, from a contractor to do those things, those firmness or that construction manager at risk. There's a risk there at a certain point of the design phase where this is the price, and it's not from day one, but after the design is not a little bit, but much further along, where the contractor comes in and gives you a price. And that's where his at-risk is, but it's it's later on during the design process, if that makes sense.
Your Honor, if I could.
Okay.
One of the things that we've talked about as part of this is We believe this option for renovation is the most cost-effective. Give us the amount of office space that we've identified that we need both now and for growth, and actually be the least expensive. But what we want to build into this process are a number of benchmarks as we move along, because right now we're only estimating. Any option we're looking at estimations. It's much easier to estimate a new building than it is a remodel. This is the process that gives us that security in looking at a remodel. But as we go through this process and we start having some benchmarks, we could very easily find that maybe this isn't the most cost effective. Maybe looking at a new building or maybe looking at a different building might come up. But if this proceeds the way we hope it will, that this should show that this is probably one of the most cost effective ways of handling this. And it gives us some hard numbers. So if we decide then to proceed, we have the hard numbers, we have the financing, and we can get off center on this project. So that's our intent, is that we're not asking you to commit to this and we won't have a chance to kind of look back, but we've got to get a process started by which we're getting some hard numbers on which we can act. Because at this point, we've just been talking about options, and we've been waiting to know what condition this building is. And from all intent and purposes, both all of us that work in here every day and the analysis, the building's solid. So it's just a matter of what can we do to renovate it.
You kind of led me into my question about office space and growth. For instance, and Chief Harrelson's going to love me for asking this, but what about the areas that need more space, in my opinion, is the police department, dispatch. They need it, I'm sorry, they do. What's that in the plans? Is there plans for growth there? Or?
That's exactly why we're talking about additional office space, utilizing some of the banquet area for exactly that growth. And also get in a mindset, some of our discussions have been that we think of the police department where it's at right now. It might make more sense that when we do the reorganization, that possibly the police department moves into another area of this building and takes up more space, and other functions like administration might move where the police department is, where they're on top of each other. It'd be more than enough room for administration. So that's the kind of the thinking out of the box that we've got to do as part of this project. When Chuck is talking about a room like this, for example, we may utilize parts of the banquet hall for meeting rooms, for courtrooms. Look at how much room we would have here for either offices or modular office units, where we wouldn't even have solid walls. We would have more modular offices for people to work in. Consider that many of these walls could go away as we do this renovation. When you start looking at it that way with some creative architectural people, suddenly you're going to have a lot of room in this building. But still, the structure of the building stays the same because it's in good shape.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but in the space study, detailed space study that was done, each department contributed their input and how much spacing. And yes, the police department, that 25,000 square feet we're talking about, is already incorporating the extra space that the chief said they need for their facility.
Okay. Joe, do you have any questions, or Doug?
I've yet to see a remodel be less expensive than a new building, but I'd like to see what we could look at, and maybe we could make this work. So you'd have my support.
Try.
I like the idea of working with the gym too.
Yeah.
Keeping it in the community.
Yep. I think that's certainly going to be popular. Okay, so do we have a motion, an item for motion?
No, at this point.
Are you looking for direction?
We're really looking for direction. If it's acceptable to you, we'll get started on the process that we've discussed today.
Will we do most of the engineering in-house as far as changing the floor plans and
I take an interactive process. Yes, the city staff will be involved with that, of the spacing in conjunction with the architect and the contractor to come up with the best scenarios and what's going to work best. it's not going to be just city staff saying, hey, I need this, but working with the architect, make sure we're meeting all the codes and ADA requirements and hall sizes, and making sure the contractor of what the cost effective doing those things.
My
That's-
biggest concern when we spoke of this a couple of months ago was the phasing, and you did address that and say that's, man, it's necessary that we
Yeah.
do this in phases so we can become or maintain an operational city hall.
It will be a mess for a while.
Yeah.
If we do this, there's no two ways about it. It will be a mess for a while. But the end result could very well be worth it. I think everybody that's crammed in offices or doesn't have heat and air that works or something like that, I think everybody will pull together if we know that it's going to be for a short period of time, and then after that it's going to be much better. So.
Chuck, do you kind of have a timeline where you might have a,
For the RFP, I would,
Yeah.
on that, it's going to take a little time to finalize that, get that out. Probably take 30 days or so to, get it on the streets, and then come back in the city council, probably 3 months. I'd hate to say, it might be possible a little quicker than that, but I would imagine
do it
about
right.
3 months from now, to come back with that information to you on what additional information on a recommendation, who to hire, along with some project budget, scheduling, and funding options.
The other thing I'd point out too is that part of this process, you bring in, talented professionals that do this. And I think some fresh eyes really help. It helps me when I get with an architect and they show me what they've been able to do with an existing building. When you have that kind of training, I think there's a lot to work with here. And I think they'll come up with some ideas that, no offense to Chuck and no offense to me, but I think some other people could come up with some great ideas that we might not even dream of.
Okay, any objections to them plowing ahead?
no, sir?
None, Mayor.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you.
Item 18, new business. Any new business, Dean or anyone?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, 19, staff reports. The reports are in your packet if they were available, and if there's any questions, staff is present. Item 20, mayor and council community announcements. Any announcements that need to be made?
NEO tournament this
No.
weekend.
Tournament starts this weekend.
Should see a lot of people in town.
It'll be busy.
Your Honor, could I do item 20 before we go into executive session?
Yep.
Okay, is it time?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to bring up that today, the fire department was very busy, had 2 fires in the community. Want to thank Ronnie and his staff for working on that, because one fire is enough, but having 2. Police department also helped them out quite a bit, but also Phil Hildebrand of our utilities department probably saved some lives today. He was out and about doing his job, but saw the second fire and knocked on the door and woke the people up and got them out. Unfortunately, I think we lost 4 puppies, and I hate to see that, but we saved some human lives. So, you definitely expect that from the fire department and police department supporting them, but I also really appreciate the fact that our utility people step up to do something like this too. So there are a lot of, this is all happening, there are a lot of kudos and thanks going around, but I think it deserves a mention with everybody here. It's greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
And Ronnie, there was no injuries, or, is that what you told me?
Yes, we can talk later. We may have one possible slight injury, but.
Okay.
Hey, we've had several fires last couple of weeks. Of course, wintertime is the
Yeah.
time because of the heating and all.
And I know the chief and our PIO, we put out a lot of home safety. And to a great degree, a lot of things that we're going to be talking about when we get the comp plan started up about property maintenance and things such as that will tie into this, because most fires anymore are preventable. And, we narrowly avert tragedies, and we have a great department that gets out there and takes care of things. But people have got to understand where the dangers are, especially in some of our older structures and some structures that are multi-tenant. So,
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 21 is an executive session pursuant to 25 OS 307B4 and 25 OS Section 307E and 305. Do we have a motion to go into executive session for the reasons stated in the agenda item?
I'll make a motion.
And a second, please.
Second.
Roll call.
Forrester,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
Sharbutt,
Aye.
Schultz.
Hi. We are going to be in executive session for probably about 30 minutes. Okay, we are out of executive session. Item 22 and item 23. Counselor, if you will just proceed on those items. Item 24 is city manager communications.
I've already
Do you have
handled that.
anything to share?
I've already shared that.
Okay, item 25, future agenda planning. Anything that we need to make the public aware of coming up on
No,
our
sir.
agendas?
No, sir.
Item 26 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Johnson?
Aye.
Weston?
Aye.
Sharbutt?
Aye.
Forrester?
Aye.